Everything the parents warn her about comes true somehow. And that's, I found that in my life when you're like, oh my God, you're so old school. Or like, okay, this is really dated. And then you find yourself thinking that, or those things happening to you. And that's universal. You're like, oh my God, why are my parents always so right?
People always ask me, what's it like to be a child of immigrants in this country?
Mama, did you watch the Trump inauguration? We voted for you.
I'm Jackie. I recently came out to my parents as a Democrat.
You donated to Hillary Clinton.
¿Por qué no me diste ese dinero a mí? I need money.
They took it really hard, but not as hard as when I told them I was moving to New York to become an actor.
Hey, New York! Did you miss your...
I thought moving was gonna free me, but boy, was I wrong.
Have a date tonight.
They say todo el mundo ahora es on dating apps. ¿Tú sabes qué son dating apps?
Sí, papi.
Don't use them. Son dangerous.
New York or LA?
I'm actually in New York.
Nice. Okay. Do you prefer to be called Jacqueline or Jackie?
You could just say Jacqueline.
Let's do it. Ready? I'm going to now to the real introduction. Jacqueline Pereda.
Yes.
Welcome to Check It Out.
Hi. Thanks so much for having me.
Okay, so as we were saying before we started, since we're both of Cuban descent, we're probably related, right?
I think so. You even look like one of my cousins. So
and you look like one of my cousins.
Exactly.
So let me just make sure I'm recording on speaker view over here. So Generation Por Qué. I saw a little bit of it. It's amazing. I'm going to catch up on the rest later, but it's an amazing series that's airing on HBO Latino and HBO Max. It's streaming on the digital platforms, right? Is it also airing on the broadcast?
Yeah, broadcast, HBO Latino, and then HBO Max all day, every day.
Awesome. Tell me a little bit about the show.
Yeah. So it's so it was licensed as a comedy short. It's a pilot. And basically it's just we follow a woman named Jackie. And she's a first generation woman who's trying to pursue her acting dreams in New York while enjoying her very Cuban immigrant parents that live in New Jersey and are very conservative.
As are, a lot of Cuban parents. So I like the dynamic. I also like the fact, because when I first read, before I clicked on the trailer, I'm thinking, Cuban, she's from Miami, like myself. But I like the fact that you're Cuban from New Jersey. Actually, I had cousins that lived in New Jersey, Union City. Is that where you're from?
No, I was actually Harrison, and then I grew up in Marlboro. I actually grew up in the suburbs.
Okay.
With no other Cubans. So that was fun. Oh, yeah.
And so tell me a little bit about what that was like, because whereas I grew up around nothing but Cubans, you grew up in a place where you were actually like out of place. You weren't the majority. What was that like?
Absolutely. So it's really funny is the majority of my friends in, elementary school and high school, they were, like Anglo, white, and Jewish. So that was really interesting. A lot of my friends were very, like liberal and progressive, and their parents were very liberal and trusted them. And my family and my parents were so strict and very like old school Cuban. So naturally I became a comedy writer because your whole life, I was always caught in between two worlds, like the American world and the American culture versus, Cuba, my family's traditions. And they were really strict and conservative as well.
Explain that conservative dynamic to people outside of our community. They don't understand, sometimes they don't understand it because they think, all Latinos will tend to support the left. Although even in the Mexican American community, there are a lot of conservatives, but for the most part, you kind of like assume that the Latin community is going to be, Democrats, and because the Republicans have such an overtone of, let's be nice and say they don't always get, the Latin community or always welcome the Latin community. So explain the dynamic with Cuban conservatives. Why do they tend to go to that direction, and what it's like to be a first generation Cuban American who is, more progressive and liberal?
Yeah, so I think a lot of people here, I'll just say for our parents' generation, a lot of Cubans, a lot of them fled communism, and they equate that with socialism, and they equate that with being Democrat. And remember, these people uprooted their lives, left all their loved ones there, and they came to this country. This country gave them everything. And this is the land of opportunity for them. And I feel like the Republican Party especially really is kind of, like America first, family values, more conservative. And a lot of Latinos are like that. Our culture is very centered around the family, and also a lot of other immigrant communities as well. And it's funny because I grew up with a lot of friends here. Their families were from India, in Asia as well. And we all kind of bonded because our families were super conservative and everything was about the family. You know, we wanted to live up to our parents' expectations because they sacrificed a lot to come here.
And a lot of people, you know, when people hear conservative, they might be thinking just politically, but we also mean just in general, religiously, like you said, very family oriented. They don't really want the kids chasing artistic dreams, right? They're like, oh my God, you're gonna be an actress? You're gonna be an artist? What?
Yes.
Be a doctor, be a lawyer. Our Asian and Indian friends can relate to that.
Exactly. And even a lot of, and I think that's too, like Haitians, you know, even like Haitian people that I grew up with. So remember, they sacrificed a lot and they just want us to thrive and be happy. So when you tell them you want to be an actor or do something in the arts, immediately they're really suspicious and worried for you because they just want you to thrive, you know, and they're not familiar. They're not familiar with the culture. They don't know what acting, they know auditioning, you know what I mean? Like they're not even familiar with that world. So I think people forget that a lot.
So tell me about how say that again.
I said, and I wanted to really highlight that, you know.
You did. So let's get to this. So you started off with a pilot and it became a series. How many episodes is it going to be, or is it just going to be a one-off?
It's just a short. Yeah, HBO licensed it as like a comedic short, but originally it was a semi-finalist at Sundance as a web series. Then I turned it into a pilot, and then I decided to film it myself because after a year and a half of kind of shopping around, people were interested. It didn't, you know, not the development hell, but I'm a little impatient and I kind of really wanted to make it my way with the cast I had always envisioned. So I just bit the bullet and I recorded it. Not recorded it. Yeah, I shot it.
Okay, put it together, produced it, whatever you. Tell me a little bit about, so is the character, obviously the character is based on yourself. Can you tell me like the dichotomy between the character's experience and your own?
Absolutely. Well, first off, fun fact, I originally wanted to name her Isabel, which is mommy's name in the short. And one of my friends read it and he's like, why isn't her name Jackie? Like your dad calls you Yaki. That's hilarious. So I said, oh my God, I'm like, you're so right. So I ended up naming her Jackie. Oh yeah, and she's totally like inspired by me. And like I love NSYNC and Selena. So like the diehard of that in this in the short, that's totally me. But also I think too, it's like kind of like the guilt of like chasing your dreams, like wanting to become something you know that you're meant to be, but also wanting to honor your parents. You know what I mean? So that's like the biggest, I think that's the biggest like parallel between us for sure. That line of you want so much more and to grow into who you're meant to be, but like you also don't want to offend your, you know, your parents. And yeah, so that's kind of like the biggest similarities between us.
So you wrote, did you direct the short as well? How many roles did you take on?
Wrote, directed, produced it along with another executive producer. Did all the wardrobe, and I was in it too.
Wow, look at you, one woman band.
One woman band, yeah. But I also encourage anyone listening, you should do it. Even if it doesn't go anywhere, you learn so much about yourself and you learn so much about collaboration and happy accidents, so much stuff that made it into the short. It's because I was like, am I allowed to curse?
Yeah.
Okay. Because I was like a dumbass with things. I had no idea what I was doing and like failed forward, and all of them were kind of happy accidents. So I really always encourage people, like definitely make something. And once you make it, you just feel so empowered, you know, and then you can like make another one. It's like, it's a baby step. And it's a step.
Are you in New York right now?
If I told you I was quarantining with my parents in New Jersey.
Well, because I was going to say, this looks like your parents' house. That looks like way too nice of an apartment for New York.
No, this is my dad's printer and his fax machine. This is
the walls are
nice
suburban walls. Those are not New York apartment walls. Where in New York do you live, if you don't mind?
Miami, Brooklyn.
Nice.
Brooklyn, yeah.
My sister moved up there. She was living in Red Hook for a while, but she moved down to Miami. Her and her wife, and they had a baby, and they went to a more secure job. The wife is a lawyer. My family's down there to help out, but they're gonna make their way back up to New York.
I love New York. What brought you out to LA? I mean, aside from the obvious.
I used to work for, this is dating myself a little bit, but there was an era called Mundos, MUN2. It was one of the first bilingual networks. I came out with them. I used to be a writer. I wrote for the Miami Herald and the Miami New Times and Ocean Drive Magazine. Mm-hmm. Okay, nice.
Yeah, I majored in journalism.
Right, nice. Where?
Broadcast TV, Rutgers University.
Ooh, nice, cool. Yeah, in New Jersey.
Yeah.
So anyway, they moved their operations out here, and I just decided to come. I always thought I was gonna end up in New York, and I still go to New York like once a year, and I had been doing things up there for websites or whatever. But when I got the opportunity to come to LA, I was like, oh, let me do that, and I've been here ever since. And now I feel like very California-ish. I like being, it's funny. I was telling you that I grew up around Cubans, and now I'm like the Cuban in the room, whether I'm with other Latinos or non-Latinos. You grew up not around Cubans. So I actually enjoy being like one of the only Cubans in the room, because I don't know, it makes me feel special. And instead of hearing everyone yap and sounding like me and everyone screaming over each other.
It's so true. Well, what's funny is a lot of like my friends I made when we were living in North Jersey that were Cuban, like we would visit it on the weekends. So like during the week, right, it was just like I was like in the suburbs with my friends, and on the weekends it was just like with my, my abuela, like my tío, my tia, and everyone was Cuban too. So it's just really funny. Again, it's like hopping between two worlds all the time.
What do your parents think about the parents, the actors who are portraying them on the TV on your short?
Oh, they love them. They think they're hilarious. My dad was like, he's funny. I like him. I was like, well, he's inspired by you. Yeah, they're definitely inspired. And obviously as a comedy writer, you elevate the comedy and make these people, like kind of like comedic versions of the people you know. But yeah, they're definitely heavily inspired by my parents, and especially the Spanglish, and and as you know too, speaking Spanglish with your parents and your friends, that was a huge thing that was important to me, because a lot of people too don't realize how much we're in both languages. And again, not even just Cuban, like my friends that I grew up with, that their parents were from other places, same thing. Their parents would speak to them in the native tongue and they would answer in English. Yeah. So I really wanted to capture that too.
Yeah, I grew up speaking Spanish for the most part to my dad. My mom came when she was 2, so we spoke in English. Now, with my dad, if I need to be clear about something, I'm going to say it in English, because I don't want anything lost in translation. I'm saying like my Spanish is casual, or if I'm pissed. Yeah. But if I want to be clear, he'll do the same thing. He'll speak to me in English. That's funny. So you were going to say something?
No, it's the same thing with me. My dad is strictly Spanish. My mom is both, but mostly English. And again, since I've been doing a lot of interviews for this, the same thing with a lot of Cuban parents and people that speak, different languages. It's always the dad for whatever reason.
He wants to hold on.
Yes, that's so true. Yeah.
So tell me about, the process of after you shot this, you went and you shot this around, like what kind of reaction were you getting? Because, you're going to people like HBO. So I'm assuming you're going to like mainstream general market type media companies. How do they respond to like the cross-cultural thing? I know that they say, a lot of people say they want to get behind stuff, but do they get it?
Yeah. So once they saw it, people got it. When they read the pilot, not really. People were a little skittish about it, but once people saw it and they saw the family and how universal it is and how much it connected to them, that's when people kind of started buying into it. But it did this festival round. So it was at Series Fest, Women in Comedy, the LA Comedy Festival. Then HBO saw it and they loved it, and they were just like, this is exactly what we've been looking for, HBO Latino. Right. So that was really exciting. And I always, in my gut, and again, I tell everyone, always listen to your gut. I said, if people see this, it's gonna resonate with them. And it really has, to everyone that's watched it so far.
So the best route is just to go out and shoot it, do whatever you can to make it happen.
Yeah. And if you're really passionate about something and I had such a clear vision in my head of what I wanted, people will feel that when they watch it. So do it. You know what I mean? And especially nowadays, even if it's a short, even if it's something 5-10 minutes, do it. And then get your team around you.
Amazing. And what do you hope happens from here? Like, what are your goals to, be a writer on a television show, try to make this into a larger series, an ongoing series? What's the goal? Absolutely. Make more episodes and create a series out of this. And it was always, it was kind of birthed that way. That's always, I was inspired from the beginning to make it a television show. But yeah, just keep telling this story. And again, always become the best writer and producer that I can be, and, the best comedy writer. But yeah, and I love subversive comedy, So I really love what is it? Like The Daily Show, SNL, anything that comments on the culture and identity and like really quick-witted comedy, that's my thing. So I like, the cool thing about your story is that you get the license to like, maybe be a little bit politically incorrect, but from your perspective of like the outsider, or not the outsider, you're kind of caught between being an outsider and an insider, right? That's kind of like your role in life. And so you get to kind of like be a little quirkier than maybe most people because you're speaking from a certain perspective. So I kind of like that tone about your short.
Thank you so much. Yeah. And also I love, and I think a lot of people like this too, I love slices of life. Like I love when you see people when they're in their private house, you know, so like when they're at their parents' house, when they're in their bedroom, when they're driving, when they're getting ready for a date, you know, like not public facing, because I feel like we're so much more similar, and that's where the quirkiness comes out and the realness. So I always like lean into that comedy as well.
Well, I just love that shit's always happening to your character. Like, you know, it's like she can't walk down the street without getting robbed by a guy with a banana.
So that is my favorite. And again, that was not written originally. That was written because I wanted to shoot on the streets of New York, and they were like, "Oh, that's great." And I wanted to rent like a fake gun, and they're like, "Oh, that's great. So do you have an NYPD escort?" I called the DP crying. I was like, "We need an escort," and he's like, "Well, maybe we can fake, you know, like a banana and like in the bag," and then she gets held up that way. That was literally the day before.
That's amazing. Well, that's hilarious.
That's yeah. And then of course, like she would get robbed. Like that character, like she would get robbed by someone.
Yeah.
And then think it's a plátano. And then he's like,
yeah. By the way, people who's listening to this, you got to watch the short. We're not speaking in innuendo. We're speaking about literal bananas and plátanos here.
Literal, yes, exactly. You got to watch it. That's people. Honestly, everyone really responds to that because it is hilarious. And also, I think that's like, it's like your biggest fear, right? You're like, oh my God, if I'm walking and you get mugged, and you say,
especially in New York, especially for a woman who moves by herself to New York, that's like the oh God.
Exactly. And then that's another thing too, your parents don't know that life and they're always worried. So I always love irony. Like everything the parents warn her about comes true somehow. And that's, I found that in my life when you're like, oh my God, you're so old school. Or like, okay, this is really dated. And then you find yourself thinking that, or those things happening to you. And that's universal. You're like, oh my God, why are my parents always so right? You're like,
and then you can't tell them because they're just going to be more justified in their worry. You don't want to validate it, even though it's true.
Thank you. And I want that too to come across, because immigrant parents, they worry about you a lot. They're very worried about you all the time. Like, and I remember I used to watch Sex and the City and like all those comedy shows. I love them. And I used to always think, I'm like, wow, like, where are the parents? Like these women just move really freely about this world. And like, mommy's not calling her when she's out on a date with Mr. Big. I'm like, she's not getting these worried texts. I was literally kind of dumbfounded. I was like, oh, wow, this is such a different life than me. Like everyone just trusts them. With our parents, it's a little more, a little more guarded because of where they come from. And they don't know New York. They don't know what it is to chase your dreams in that way.
No, all they know is escaping from some totalitarian state and finding a stable job to raise a family.
Exactly.
You gotta love it.
Exactly.
Thank you for bringing it to the small screen, and I can't wait to see more. So people can watch Generation Porque on HBO Latino, HBO Max.
Yeah, streaming now, and I hope you guys love it. So much.
Jacqueline Pereda, thank you for being on Checkitow.
Thank you so much for having me, Humberto. Okay.
All right, I'm gonna cut it there. But before I go, I would love to get your email because I'm working on a few Cuban-oriented projects, and since you're a writer, I'm actually I published the book actually last year on the Cubans that started the rave scene in Miami. It's kind of edgy. That's not what I want to send you. I'm actually working on a Cuban Revolution project, and I would love to get like other writers, female writers' perspective. There's a lot of female characters in it. But I'd just love to touch base with you more, and when you come out to LA, maybe we can link up.
Oh, for sure.
What is it?
Pereda, my last name, Pereda, Pereda, 17 at gmail.com.
Pereda17 at gmail.com.
Yeah.
17 is when you graduated from high school, 2017?
Yeah, sure. Absolutely.
I'll find out what the 17 means the next time we talk.
No, my birthday's May 17th. It's so soon. I have the
Happy birthday!
Can you see that? May 1st it premiered. I was like, my birthday, Mom. Thank you. Yeah.
You're the nicest Taurus I've ever met in my life.
Oh my God, aren't we all nice?
I'm just kidding. I'm messing around with you. The guy that I wrote the book with is a Taurus, and so I guess maybe I just have like creative things with him. I'm just kidding. I have a lot of Taurus friends. They get shit done. I'm an Aries, so like Aries is. I know that you're from the East Coast, so you're like, I haven't bought into that bullshit yet with that astrology. If I move to California, the first thing my parents are gonna be like is stop getting into all this astrology shit. But I love messing around with people and their signs. I think Tauruses actually are. They will get from point A to point B in a very direct fashion, and if you're in their way, you better get out of the way.
Oh yeah. When I learned what the word stubborn meant, and then I read that Tauruses were stubborn, this was when I was younger. I asked my mom, I go, Mom, like, they say Tauruses are stubborn. Am I stubborn? She was like, are you stubborn? She's like, you're the most stubborn person I've ever met. But I thought stubborn was like closed off, like you're ignorant. And it's like, no, like when I put my mind to something, I just go all the way. Yeah.
That's a very good quality to have, especially for
but
a
also
filmmaker.
with a smile.